Have you ever felt like your prayers are just echoing into silence? Have you ever looked up and wondered if God is really paying attention to your pain? And what if, just what if, the silence isn't a sign of absence, but of something far greater happening behind the scenes? There are moments in life when we begin to question whether God is truly listening. We cry out, we wait, we hope, but nothing seems to shift. The mountain doesn't move, the answer doesn't come. And in that quiet, it's easy to feel forgotten. But let me assure you, God is always at work. Even in the silence, even in the waiting, He is moving. He is shaping you, preparing you, and leading you towards something that far exceeds what you could ever plan for yourself. The real question isn't whether He's listening. The real question is, are you ready to receive what He's preparing for you? Sign number 1, an increase in challenges and trials. It might sound strange, but often the first sign that God is getting ready to bless you is when life suddenly becomes more difficult. The path gets steeper, the burdens get heavier, the storms grow stronger. You may find yourself asking, why now? Why is everything falling apart just when I thought I was getting closer to the breakthrough? But what if I told you these trials are not obstacles? They are preparation. God doesn't allow them to destroy you. He allows them to strengthen you, to shape you into the kind of person who can carry the weight of the blessing without crumbling under it. Because He's not just interested in your comfort, He's committed to your character. And before He can elevate you, He wants to make sure you're ready. Many times before God takes you to the next level, He first examines your heart. He allows certain struggles to arise not to punish you, but to refine your faith, to stretch your endurance, to deepen your trust, so that when the blessing comes, you won't just receive it, you'll know how to carry it with wisdom and humility. Look at the life of Joseph. He had a divine dream, an undeniable vision of greatness. But before that vision ever came true, Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. If you had seen him in those moments, you might have thought God had abandoned him, but the truth is, God was preparing him. Those trials weren't signs of rejection, they were evidence of purpose. Had Joseph gone straight from dream to throne, he wouldn't have been ready. It was the prison that made him a leader. It was the pain that made him wise. Maybe that's where you are now. Maybe everything around you feels like it's falling apart. You've prayed, you've waited, you've believed, but all you're facing is resistance. That's when the enemy whispers, if God was really with you, why is this happening? But let me remind you, the enemy only attacks what he fears. The fact that you're under pressure isn't a sign that you've been forgotten, it's a sign that you're being forged. If you weren't destined for something great, the enemy wouldn't bother. God's greatest warriors are not made in easy seasons. They're shaped in the fire. A soldier is never trained in the safety of victory. He's trained in the intensity of preparation, where no one sees, where nothing feels easy. Before David ever stood before Goliath, he had to face the lions and bears alone in the field. Before Moses led a nation, he wandered in the desert for 40 years. Before Jesus began his ministry, he was tested in the wilderness for 40 days. And maybe, just maybe, you're in your own wilderness right now. Not forgotten, but being prepared for something far greater than you can yet see. So what happens when the waiting stretches on? What is God doing in the silence? Let's explore that in part 2, where we uncover the powerful purpose behind every season of waiting. When life gets harder instead of easier, it might not be because you're on the wrong path, but because God is getting you ready for something greater. If you're facing challenges right now, take heart. It could be that God is building you up, not breaking you down. The pain you feel isn't pointless. It has a purpose, pain teaches. It strengthens. Endurance strips away pride and forces us to lean on God in ways we never have before. When life feels smooth, we're tempted to believe we're in control, that we've got everything handled. But it's in the fire of adversity that we learn what it means to truly trust God. In the heat of trials we discover He is more than a provider. He is our sustainer, our refuge, our ever-present help in time of need. We learn that even when everything is gone, even when we have nothing left, He is still enough. Some of the hardest battles you're fighting right now may be the exact things that will prepare you for the blessing that's coming. Maybe you lost your job and you don't understand why. Maybe a relationship ended and you're left feeling broken. Maybe life just feels unfair and you can't see a way forward. But what if that loss is actually setting you up for something better? What if the pain you're going through is gently pushing you toward the very place God wants you to be? The enemy wants you to stay focused on the struggle. He wants you to believe this is the end, that you won't survive it. But God is whispering something different. He's saying, hold on, I'm working, I'm strengthening you, I'm preparing you for something bigger than what you can see right now. The pressure you're under, it's not meant to crush you, it's meant to position you. The fire you're walking through, it's not meant to burn you, it's meant to refine you. Think about how gold is purified. It has to go through intense heat. That heat causes the impurities to rise to the surface so the refiner can remove them. The process is painful, but it makes the gold more valuable. And in the same way, God allows trials to refine you, to purge what doesn't belong to, sharpen your character, to strengthen your spirit, to build your faith. The very things that feel unbearable right now might be the tools God is using to get you ready for what He's about to release into your life. Sign number 2, a season of waiting. Waiting. It's one of the hardest things we ever have to do. We live in a world that worships speed. People want overnight success. Everything around us is designed to move faster. But God doesn't operate on human schedules. His timing is not our timing. His ways are higher, wiser, better than ours. When God calls you into a season of waiting, it isn't to punish you, it's to prepare you. Think of a seed buried deep in the soil. You can water it, make sure it gets sunlight, do everything you know to do, but you still can't force it to break through the ground before it's time. There is an appointed season for the harvest, and until that time comes, the seed stays hidden, buried deep beneath the soil, completely out of sight. It may look like nothing is happening, but something is. The seed is growing. The roots are stretching downward, anchoring deep into the earth. They're forming a foundation strong enough to support what's coming. And when the time is right, when the process is complete, the seed will break through the surface. Not a second too early, not a moment too late. That's exactly what a season of waiting feels like. You're doing all you know to do. You're praying, believing, remaining faithful. But on the outside, it looks like nothing is moving. It feels like heaven is silent. You might even start to look around and wonder, why is everyone else moving forward while I'm stuck in place? You see others stepping into breakthroughs, into purpose, into blessing, while you're still in the same place, still waiting, still asking. And in that quiet, the enemy begins to whisper, maybe God forgot about you, maybe you're not good enough, maybe you'll never get there, but that voice is a lie. God has not forgotten you. He is never late. He is never behind schedule. He is not confused or uncertain. He knows exactly what He is doing. What looks like stillness on the outside is actually preparation on the inside. The waiting season is not wasted time. It is sacred time. It is where God is working behind the scenes. He is arranging circumstances. He is aligning hearts. He is preparing opportunities that you don't even know exist yet. And most importantly, He is preparing you. Because sometimes we think we're ready, but God in His wisdom knows we're not. If He gives us the blessing too soon, we may not know how to handle it. We might take it for granted. Or worse, we may step into something we're not spiritually or emotionally equipped to carry. Just think about David. He was anointed by the prophet Samuel when he was just a young shepherd boy, chosen by God to be king, and yet he didn't step into the throne the next day or even the next year. David had to wait. He had to walk through betrayal battles and the loneliness of caves before he could lead from a throne. And through every hardship, God was shaping him, turning a shepherd boy into a king. Or consider Abraham. God gave him a promise that he would be the father of many nations. But then came the waiting. Days turned into years, and still no son. Imagine the questions, the doubt, the internal wrestling, and yet God's promise did not fail. At the appointed time, not a moment too soon, not a moment too late, Isaac was born. Waiting tests us. It stretches our faith. It reveals what we truly believe. And it's so easy in the waiting to become frustrated, to compare our story to someone else's highlight reel, to wonder why God seems to be moving for everyone but us. But what you don't see is what God is doing behind the curtain. You don't see the doors He's preparing to open for you. You don't see the dangers He's protecting you from. You don't see how He's strengthening your faith, building your character, and teaching you to depend on Him, not on results, not on timing, but on His presence alone. Because in the end, waiting isn't just about what you're waiting for. It's about who you're becoming while you wait. Waiting teaches you patience. It forces you to slow down, to loosen your grip on your own agenda, and to surrender your carefully crafted timeline. It humbles you. It reminds you that you're not the one in control. And truth be told, that's exactly where God wants you to be. Not depending on your own understanding, not leaning on your own strength, but fully relying on Him. Look at Joseph. He spent years in a prison cell before stepping into his destiny. Look at Moses. He wandered the wilderness for 40 long years before God called him to lead an entire nation. Even Jesus, the Son of God, waited 30 years in quiet obedience before beginning His public ministry. If they had to wait, if they had to be prepared, refined, made ready, why should we expect anything different? God is never in a hurry, but He is always right on time. The real question isn't whether God will fulfill His promises. He will. The deeper question is, will you trust Him while you wait? Will you remain faithful when there's no visible progress? Will you keep praying when the answers don't come right away? Will you still believe that His timing is perfect even when it looks nothing like yours? Sign number 3. A call to deeper faith. Faith is easy when everything's going smoothly. When the path is clear, the doors are open, the prayers are answered, and the blessings are flowing. Trusting God feels natural, but what about when things go silent? When the doors stay shut? When the storm doesn't pass? What happens when you can't see anything happening, and yet God is still saying, trust me? That is when faith is truly tested, and that is when God calls you to go deeper. Not surface level belief, not emotional hype, but real, raw, tested faith. A call to deeper faith isn't a gentle whisper. More often than not, it feels like a stretch, a challenge that shakes the core of your confidence. It's when God invites you to trust Him beyond what your eyes can see too. Believe in His goodness, even when the world around you says the opposite. Because true faith isn't about how you feel, it's about obedience. It's not about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who does. Remember Peter. When he saw Jesus walking on the water, he had enough faith to step out of the boat. And as long as his eyes were fixed on Jesus, he walked, doing the impossible, defying logic, living the miracle. But the moment he shifted his focus, when he looked at the wind, and the waves' fear took over, and he began to sink. That is the reality of faith. When God calls you deeper, He's calling you to fix your eyes not on the chaos around you, but on Him alone, to look past the storm, to look beyond what scares you, and to hold your gaze steady on the one who never changes. Often, God allows situations that leave us with no choice but to trust Him. Maybe right now you've come to the end of yourself. Maybe you've exhausted your strength, your plans, your efforts, and nothing is working. Could it be that you've arrived at the exact place where God wants to meet you? Maybe you've come to the end of yourself. You've done everything you know to do. You've tried, you've pushed, you've planned, and yet nothing seems to work. And now you're left with no other choice but to lean completely on God. That moment, though it may feel like a breaking point, is not a punishment. It's actually a holy invitation, because that's the moment your faith stops being theory and starts becoming real. That's the moment you stop relying on your own strength and start depending entirely on His. Abraham was called to deeper faith when God asked him to walk away from everything he knew, his home, his family, his familiar surroundings, and to step into the unknown. God didn't hand him a map. He didn't give him all the answers. He simply said, "Go to the land I will show you." No timeline, no details, just trust. And Abraham obeyed. He walked by faith, not by sight. And that is the same kind of faith God is calling you to. Deeper faith doesn't always come with miracles or breakthroughs. Sometimes it means choosing to believe when nothing makes sense. It means standing on God's promises when there's no visible sign of fulfillment. It means continuing to pray for healing even when the symptoms persist. It means clinging to the Word of God even when your circumstances scream the opposite. It means holding your ground when doubt knocks and saying to fear, "You will not win today." Look at Job. He lost everything, his wealth, his children, his health, and yet in the depth of his pain, he refused to turn away from God. His faith wasn't built on what God had given him. It was rooted in who God was. That's the kind of faith God wants to form in you, a faith that stands in the fire, that doesn't shake in the storm, that declares boldly, "Even if He does not deliver me, I will still trust Him." A call to deeper faith often comes through testing, and not just gentle tests, but trials that push you to the edge, where you have no one left to rely on but God Himself. But don't be mistaken, God doesn't do this to watch you struggle. He allows it because He wants to strengthen you, to build a kind of faith in you that cannot be shaken by life's storms, a faith that isn't dependent on what God does for you, but on who God is to you. He wants you to know Him not just as your provider when things are easy, but as the one who sustains you even when the provision hasn't come, not just as your healer when healing is instant, but as the one who carries you through pain day by day. He wants you to know in the deepest part of your soul that He alone is enough. Because faith isn't just about believing that God exists. It's about trusting Him enough to follow Him, even when the road is hard, even when the waves are high, even when the path ahead is dim and uncertain. It's about letting go of control and saying, "Lord, I don't understand, but I trust You." And when God calls you to deeper faith, He's not asking you to prove your strength. He's asking you to trust in His. Because true faith isn't about how much you can do. It's about how deeply you believe that He will do what He has promised. Sign number 4. Opportunities to serve others. There's a principle in God's kingdom that many people miss, not because it's hidden, but because it's the opposite of what the world teaches us. Before God blesses you, He often invites you to become a blessing. Before He pours into your life, He asks you to pour into the lives of others. While the world urges us to chase recognition, build personal success, and focus on what we can gain, God gently redirects us toward a higher path, serving. God's way is upside down to the world's logic. He teaches that the greatest among us is not the one with the most followers, the biggest platform, or the loudest voice, but the one who humbly serves. And these moments to serve, they are not random, they are not small, they are divine assignments. Each one is a window where God is shaping your heart, testing your motives, and preparing you for something bigger than you can imagine. Before He gives you more, He watches what you do with what you already have. Before He entrusts you with leadership or influence, He observes how you handle the unnoticed opportunities to care, to give, to help right where you are. Just look at Joseph. He had a God-given dream that one day he would lead and be lifted to a high place. But the path to that dream wasn't fast or glamorous. Before Joseph ever saw the palace, he served in Potiphar's house. He served, again this time, in a prison cell. He didn't see those places as beneath him. He didn't complain that his dream was delayed. He was faithful even in the shadows. And because he served well in the small places, God opened the doors to greater ones. The same principle applies to us. We often pray for favor, for open doors, for promotion. But God is watching how we treat the opportunities to serve that are already in front of us. Are we willing to help someone in need, even when it costs us? something? Do we give generously, even when no one is watching? Do we step out of our routines and comfort zones to lift someone else? These are the tests that reveal whether our hearts are truly ready for the next level. And Jesus himself gave us the ultimate example. He had all authority, yet he chose to kneel and wash the feet of his disciples. He touched the untouchable, dined with outcasts, and comforted the broken. He didn't just speak about love, he lived it. And then he turned to us and said, "Go and do the same." True greatness is not found in how many people serve us, but in how many people we serve. Sometimes God brings people into our path, not because they need us, but because we need them. We need what he wants to teach us through the act of serving. We need the character that's built in the giving. We need the humility that comes when we choose to love without needing to be seen. Because serving in the eyes of heaven is never a burden, it's a privilege. When you serve something, powerful begins to shift within you. Your heart becomes softer, your perspective changes. You begin to see people the way Christ sees them, not through the lens of judgment or comparison, but with compassion and love. Slowly, you start to realize that life was never meant to be centered on what you can get, but on what you can give. You begin to understand that the greatest fulfillment doesn't come from receiving, but from pouring yourself out for the sake of others. And here's the beautiful part. The more you give, the more God gives to you. The more you pour into others, the more God pours into you, not because you're earning his favor, but because serving aligns your heart with his. It puts you in rhythm with heaven. When you give, you receive. When you help someone else, God meets your own needs in ways you never expected. When you step outside of yourself to bless others, God begins opening doors, changing situations, and releasing favor into your life. Of course, it's not always easy. It's not always convenient. Serving may require sacrifice. It may ask you to stretch to leave your comfort zone to give when you're tired or uncertain. But every opportunity to serve is an opportunity to grow too. Take one step closer to the calling God has placed on your life. Every time you serve, you are stepping into purpose. You are becoming his hands and feet in a world desperately in need of his love and grace. And when you choose that life, when you live not for yourself, but to be used by God, something remarkable happens. You begin to walk right into the blessings that he's been preparing for you all along. Sign number 5, letting go of the past. Letting go of the past is one of the most difficult yet necessary things we are called to do. The past has a way of clinging to us, whispering regrets, stirring up old wounds, replaying scenes that we wish we could change. It creeps into our thoughts, reminding us of what was, what could have been, or what we think should have been different. And sometimes the weight of it all becomes overwhelming. Past mistakes, past relationships, past disappointments, they hang heavy on our hearts. But if God is getting ready to do something new in your life, he will call you to release what is old, because the truth is, some things in your past cannot go with you into your future. There are relationships, habits, mindsets, and even emotions that God is gently asking you to surrender, not because they didn't matter, but because they're keeping you from what he wants to do next. You cannot embrace the new things God has for you while still clinging to yesterday's burdens. Holding on to the past keeps you stuck in place, but letting go, that creates space for God to move. Think about Lot's wife. God was rescuing her, pulling her out of destruction, offering her a new beginning. He gave her one clear instruction: don't look back. But she couldn't do it. She turned around, longing for what she was leaving behind, and in that moment she lost everything. That's what happens when we refuse to release the past. It steals from the future God is trying to give us. It keeps us bound to a version of life that no longer fits who God is calling us to be. Some people are holding on to past mistakes, buried in guilt and regret over things that cannot. The enemy loves to use the past as a weapon. He knows he can't stop God's plan for your life, so instead he tries to stop you from believing you're still worthy of it. He whispers reminders of every failure, every wrong turn, every sin you've ever committed, and then quietly adds, you're not worthy of God's blessings. But hear this clearly, that is a lie. God's grace is always greater than your past. His mercy reaches deeper than your worst mistakes. If God has already forgiven you, then you have every reason to forgive yourself. Stop letting guilt and shame be the chains that hold you back from the new life God is trying to lead you into. For some, it's not mistakes that haunt you, it's wounds. Someone betrayed your trust. Someone hurt you deeply. And even though time has moved on, the pain still lingers like a shadow in your heart. But if you never release that pain, it will slowly become a prison. Unforgiveness never harms the one who wronged you. It only harms you. It keeps you tied to the very thing God longs to set you free from. Letting go doesn't mean pretending it never hurt. It doesn't mean what happened was okay. It doesn't mean you weren't deeply wounded. What it does mean is that you are trusting God to carry what you can't. It means refusing to let bitterness poison your joy, your peace, and your future. And then there are those who are stuck in the past for a different reason. They're holding on to past successes. You once thrived. You once felt strong, useful, recognized. And now you're hesitant to move forward because staying where things are familiar feels safer than risking the unknown. But sometimes, the good things of yesterday can keep us from the greater things God wants to do today. It's easy to settle, to cling to what you've always known, to stay in the comfort zone of past victories. But God is always calling us higher. He is always drawing us deeper. The blessings He has for you are not locked behind you. They are waiting ahead. He's not asking you to forget your story, but He is asking you not to live stuck in it. The Apostle Paul said it best, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal. That is the mindset God desires in us, a posture of forward focus, a heart that believes God's plans are still good, even if we don't fully understand them yet, a faith that chooses to trust that He is working all things together for good, even the things we can't yet make sense of. And here's the truth, letting go of the past is not usually a one-time event. Most of the time, it's a daily choice. Every morning you wake up and choose to surrender again. You choose to forgive again. You choose to trust again. You decide to walk forward, even if your heart wants to look back, because you know God is doing a new thing, and you refuse to miss it by holding on to what was. God cannot pour new blessings into hands that are still gripping yesterday's burdens. He cannot lead you into a new season if you're still living emotionally and spiritually in the last one. Sign number 6, new doors. Opening unexpected. There are moments in life when you feel completely stuck, like you're standing at a hallway full of closed doors, and no matter how hard you knock, nothing opens. You pray, you seek, you try to move forward, but it feels like the heavens are silent. You do everything you know to do, but things don't change. Progress feels impossible. But it's often in those very moments, the silent, still frustrating moments, that God is working in ways you can't see. He's setting things in motion, preparing to open doors you didn't even know existed. When God moves, rarely does it in the way we expect. He doesn't follow our timelines or stick to our carefully crafted plans. But one thing is certain, He is never late. At the right time, not a second too early, not a moment too late, God will open the right door. And here's what's powerful. When God opens a door, no one can shut it. You don't have to force it. You don't have to manipulate the outcome. You don't have to beg or push or strive. When it's God's time, He opens it Himself, and all you have to do is walk through. The truth is, many of us become so focused on the door we wanted that we miss the door God is preparing. We fix our eyes on one outcome, one opportunity, one plan, and when that doesn't happen, we assume God isn't listening. But what if the closed door was actually His protection? What if He blocked that path? Because He has something better in mind, something you wouldn't have chosen, but something perfectly aligned with your purpose. Take a moment to reflect on Joseph's story. He never imagined that the path to his destiny would begin with betrayal. He didn't expect to be thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, or falsely imprisoned. From outside his life seemed to be falling apart. And if you had asked Joseph during those dark seasons, he might have told you he was moving further and further from the dream God gave him. But every step, every closed door, every painful detour was part of God's divine setup. What looked like rejection was actually redirection. The door he thought was slamming shut was really swinging open toward the palace. Joseph didn't understand it then, but in time, it all made sense. That's how God often works. He moves through the unexpected. He allows certain things to fall away. He lets people exit your life. He permits certain plans to collapse, not to hurt you, but to position you. What feels like a setback is, sometimes, the very shift that moves you into your purpose. And yes, it might not make sense right now. It might feel like loss. It might feel confusing, disorienting, unfair. But what if, just what if, God is making room for something you never even thought to ask for? It may feel like you're losing. It may feel like everything is falling apart. But what if you're not losing at all? What if you're actually being redirected, not away from your purpose, but towards something greater than you could have imagined? What if that opportunity you wanted so badly, the one that slipped through your fingers, was actually too small compared to what God had planned for you? Think about Ruth. Her life took a turn she never saw coming. She lost her husband. She left everything she knew. She followed her mother-in-law Naomi into a foreign land. No promises, no guarantees, just faith. She had no clue what the future held. And yet, as she stayed faithful, as she continued to walk forward, one step at a time, she found herself standing in the field of Boaz, a field she never intended to find, a door she never expected to walk through. And there, God's plan began to unfold before her eyes. That's how God works. When He opens a door, it usually requires a step of faith. It won't always make sense. It might not match what you imagined or hoped for. But if you trust Him, if you're willing to lay down your own expectations, you'll discover blessings that exceed what you ever prayed for. The enemy, on the other hand, wants you trapped in disappointment. He wants you stuck on what didn't work out, on what hasn't happened yet, on what still feels broken. He wants to convince you that the doors are locked, that nothing will change, that you'll always be stuck in this place. But don't believe that voice, because God is always working, even in the silence, even in the waiting, even in the moments when everything seems to be standing still. And when the time is right, when it's His moment, not yours, nothing can stop the door He's about to open in your life. Your job isn't to break the door down. Your job isn't to force your way through. Your job is to stay faithful, to keep trusting, to keep believing. And when the door opens, and it will, you'll know without a doubt that it wasn't your striving that made it happen. It was the hand of God. And one day, you'll look back not with regret, but with awe. You'll see that every delay, every closed door, every unexpected turn was actually leading you right to where you were meant to be. Because when God opens a door, no one can shut it. And when He walks you through it, He makes sure you're ready to step fully into the blessing He has prepared. Sign number 7, a renewed sense of peace and trust. So what happens after all the waiting, all the letting go, all the stepping out in faith? What comes next after obedience? Often it's this: a deep, unshakable peace, a stillness of heart, a quiet confidence. Because when God is preparing you for His blessings, He doesn't just shift your circumstances, He renews your spirit from the inside out. Peace is not the absence of trouble. It's not about everything in your life lining up perfectly or having zero stress, zero struggle, zero setbacks. True peace doesn't come when the storm ends. It comes in the middle of the storm, when you realize you are not facing it alone. Jesus never promised a life without hardship. In fact, He said plainly, "In this world you will have trouble." That wasn't a maybe, it was a certainty. But He didn't leave us with that. He followed with a powerful promise. "Take heart, for I have overcome the world." That's where real peace is found. Not in perfect outcomes, but in knowing that God is in control, no matter what happens. Trusting God doesn't come easily for most of us. It's not automatic. It's something that's built slowly, deliberately over time. It grows through experience, through pain, through delays, through situations where nothing makes sense. Anyone can say, "I trust God when everything's working out." But what about when it's not? What about when the prayer goes unanswered? When the waiting stretches into months or years? When the door stays closed long after you thought it should have opened? That's when trust transforms from a nice idea into a decision, a daily choice. That's when it becomes real. Think of Abraham. God called him to leave everything, his home, his country, his family, and go to a place he had never seen. God didn't give him a map or a timeline, just a command, "Go." And Abraham went. He obeyed before he understood. And as he walked, God proved Himself faithful, step by step. Each time God provided, Abraham's peace deepened. His trust wasn't built in one dramatic moment. It was formed through a series of steps where God showed up again and again. The same is true for you. The more you choose to trust God, the more peace you will begin to experience. The more you surrender your fears and stop trying to control what was never yours to hold, the more freedom you'll begin to feel. Because worry comes from the illusion of control. But peace comes from release. When you finally say, "Lord, I trust you no matter what," something shifts, not necessarily around you, but inside you. That's when you step into a peace that surpasses understanding, a peace that doesn't shake when the circumstances do. A peace that doesn't depend on everything going your way. A peace that's not built on answers, but on God's unchanging nature. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. If He's been faithful before, He will be faithful again. If He's provided before, He will provide again. If He's brought you through before, He will not fail you. Now, Peter experienced this firsthand. He was in the boat when he saw Jesus walking on water, a moment that defied logic, fear, and nature. And Peter had enough faith to step out. He took that first bold step toward Jesus. And as long as his eyes were fixed on the Savior, he walked not just physically but spiritually over the impossible. But the moment he looked at the wind and the waves, fear crept in. Doubt clouded his heart. And just like that, he began to sink. That is exactly what happens to us. When we take our eyes off God and focus instead on the storm around us, fear rushes in and peace, it slips away. But here's the beauty of grace. The moment Peter cried out, Jesus reached for him immediately, without hesitation. That is what God does for us. Even when our faith falters, even when we hesitate, even when we doubt, He is still there, ready to lift us up. A renewed sense of peace and trust doesn't arrive overnight. It is cultivated, grown slowly in the soil of struggle, watered by surrender. It takes root in the quiet moments, when we choose to believe even when we don't understand it. Is shaped in prayer, deepened in worship, strengthened every time we stop striving, and simply rest in the truth of who God is. And when you stop trying to control everything, when you finally breathe, let go, and sit in God's presence, you realize that peace has been there all along. You discover that trust was never about having all the answers. It was about knowing that you didn't need them because God already does. And that, my friend, is more than enough. When God is preparing to bless you, He doesn't just hand you the promise. He prepares you for it. He takes you through a process, not to harm you, not to frustrate you, but to shape you, to make sure that when the blessing arrives, you're strong, enough to carry it, humble enough to steward it, and wise enough to walk in it. He allows challenges and trials to purify your heart and refine your character. He leads you through seasons of waiting to teach you patience and total dependence on His timing. He calls you into deeper faith, pushing you beyond the borders of your comfort, so you learn to trust even when you can't see. He opens doors for you to serve, because He wants to see how you handle little before entrusting you with more. He invites you to release the past, to free your hands for the future. He's already written. He opens unexpected doors, reminding you that it's His path, not yours. And through it all, He renews your peace, revives your trust, and reminds you He is enough. Every trial, every delay, every silent night, none of it is wasted. It's all part of His greater plan. So if you're in the middle of the process, don't be discouraged. Don't let the silence fool you. Don't let fear or doubt convince you that nothing is happening. Because even now, in ways you may not see, God is working. He's aligning people. He's preparing opportunities. He's molding your heart. And when the time is right, He will open the door. He will make the way. The blessing is not delayed. It's being prepared. And so are you.